Hi, this is Benjamin Rolnick, and I've got such an important question for you today. Why are people so stupid? How can they be so ignorant? How can they be so dumb? How can they be so out of their minds and so it's so frustrating, isn't it? When you've got something that you want to share, and you know that it's great, and you've got a movie that you saw that was just the best movie that you've ever seen, and you share it with your friends like, nah, I don't really want to see that. And you're like, no, what are you talking about? The acting was the best acting I've ever seen, and the writing was so phenomenally great. You have to see this movie, I promise you. It is absolutely excellent. It will change your life. And your friend's like, not really that big of a deal. I don't really want to see it. And you're like, no, you don't understand. It is absolutely mind-bogglingly amazing. It will rip your heart out of your chest, and you'll see it in front of you beating, and the blood will be all over the floor, and lightning bolts will come strike you through the top of your head. Your friend goes, you know what, that actually doesn't sound like a very good experience. And you're like, no, but you don't understand, like, your eyes will just see the world in a whole new way, and like, colors will become more vibrant, and they'll attach to your eyes, and you'll feel these laser beams heading through your head, and your neck, and your chest, and your head, and all these things. And your friend's just like, no, now I definitely do not want to do that. And it's so frustrating. Oh my God, isn't it frustrating when you are on one side of a problem or a situation and you're talking to somebody who just totally does not understand where you're coming from, and everything you say just seems to move you guys farther and farther and farther apart. It's not like the gap is being closed, it's only being lengthened. Roca had a great poem. He said, in between stars, what distance is? Yet how much vaster the distance we observe from what is right here. A brother beside him, a man beside him, his brother or sister. Oh, how incomprehensibly far. Oh, how incomprehensibly far two people can be from each other, regardless of how far we are from the stars or the stars are from each other. And we're constantly looking up and around, but I mean, how far away our nose is from our eyes. I mean, the distance between things is absolutely amazing. I mean, Zeno had a paradox about Achilles and the tortoise, and he said, well, how can Achilles ever beat the tortoise in a foot race? Because he has to have the distance between himself and the tortoise every single time. And if you just keep having and having and having and having and having, meaning dividing in two, the distance between here and there, you'll never get anywhere, because you just half, it goes on for an infinity, an infinite period of time. So it's so interesting to me, because I ran the philosophy club at USC, and I was always so fascinated by ideas. I wanted to learn, I wanted to grow, and I had this amazing community of other people around me who also wanted to learn and also wanted to grow. And I never understood people who didn't want to grow their souls, who didn't want to learn and expand their mind, who didn't want to get an edge in life and learn the one very thing that could make a difference for them and for their families and for their friends and for, I'll just give a stupid example. It's not stupid, it's actually a smart example about learning and memory. This is a total rant, by the way. For anybody watching. So for learning and memory, I've always been obsessed with it. And I've been obsessed with it because I had a photographic memory when I was younger. I mean, I was so good I could remember everything that everybody wore every single day from school, like from literally like 4th grade on up. And I was acutely aware of everything somebody said to me. I could literally repeat it verbatim months afterwards. And I think it was like because I smoked weed at a young age or something, and it leads to hippocampal lesions. I don't know. Something happened, and that part of my memory kind of faded. And now I've got a sort of memory where I forget things like a goldfish. I mean, you could tell me something, and 2 seconds later, gone. It's out of my brain. But I've always been fascinated by intelligence, because there is no learning without memory. If you learn something and you forget it, did you ever really learn it? No. I mean, haven't you ever had the experience of like, let's use like a very practical example, like you're learning Photoshop, like you learned Photoshop, you learned how to edit photos in this magnanimous, amazing way, and then all of a sudden you don't do it for like 6 months, you don't do it for 10 months, you don't do it for a few years, and you come back to it and it's like, oh my God, I gotta start this all from scratch. And the problem is that like you might have learned it at a certain time, but there is no learning without memory, just like there's no like consistent flexibility without stretching. If you stop stretching one day, you lose your flexibility. There's no learning without memory. It's a very simple, easy principle, easy to grasp. Now, some people don't care. Some people are like, you know what? It's totally fine. I don't need to remember things. I'll just sort of go about my life and things will happen to me, and, I'll just sort of gracefully flow on by. And other people, like myself, very much care. Like, I want to excel in life. I want to be a bigger person. I want to maximize my potential. I've got a vision for myself. I see myself in the future, and I see what I'm capable of. And to me, it's a tragedy to not fully express that part of my greatness, and to not stand for all the parts of me that are wanting to come forth into the world. You know, I think it's a tragedy to die with the music still within you. You know, the death of Ivan Illich. He goes through his entire life living for other people. You know, he marries a woman he doesn't want to marry. He goes into a job he doesn't want to go into. And the whole time he wants to be a composer. He wants to bring forth his magnum opus into the world. And he never dies. He dies with the music still in him. And I don't think there's any way to not use our creativity or to not give our gift and still feel utterly fulfilled in this world. And for some of us, our gift is not easy to bring forth. As John Stuart Mill said, there's a fecundity of pleasure. Like, for example, you might get a certain amount of pleasure from just sort of like strolling and, you know, looking up at the stars at night. But that pleasure increases when you start to get a sense of what the constellations are. He said playing violin has a giant fecundity of pleasure because it's such a complex task that you can just do it forever. You never have to quit. You never have to give up on it. And it can constantly increase and grow. Whereas other pleasures, they're just like, they're exhausting. They just end at a certain point, and there's nothing more that you can get from them. Which isn't to say that like higher fecund pleasures are like necessary, or you know, you need to do them. But I'm just somebody who's very much enwrapped by that. I'm very much a fan of things that I can expand into, that I can grow into. So, you know, I started off this by saying, like, you know, how stupid can people be who don't understand what we like? So Mother Teresa had written on her wall, let's see if I remember this, something like, you know, people are selfish, illogical, and unreasonable. Love them anyways. If you do good, you will be accused of selfish, ulterior motives. Do good anyways. If you succeed, you'll win false friends and true enemies. Succeed anyways. If you're honest and frank, you will be vulnerable. Be honest and frank anyways. The biggest men and women with the biggest minds are torn down by the smallest men and women with the smallest minds. Think big anyways. The good that you do, the good that you spend years creating will be destroyed overnight. Do good, build big anyways. If you do your best, you'll get kicked in your teeth. Do your best anyways. If you help people, they'll hate you for it. Help people anyways. And then there's like, you know, kind of an interesting ending to that. But the thing is that it's such a fascinating idea because, you know, this all kind of came together for me because I've been inviting people. Now as I turn it and I'm like, this is what I'm talking about, people are going to be like, what the fuck? This is what you're talking about? But I've been inviting people to this landmark introduction at my house tonight, led by a landmark forum leader. Now, to give you a sense of what this means, essentially imagine I was inviting people to a judo class in my house. And, you know, most judo classes are taught by people who are like just like far derivative judo teachers. They might be black belts, but they're like first degree black belts. Now imagine that I'm inviting you over to my house for a judo class taught by one of 30 of like the 10th degree black belts in the entire world. Like there's only 30 of them in the entire world. Like, well, it's kind of a big deal. It's kind of a big, awesome opportunity. And I've been so shocked by how many people, A, don't see the value of it, and B, like hate Landmark. Like they hate it with an absolute like vengeance, as though like Landmark, like, you know, raped and murdered their mother and pillaged their village. And is like the reason why we live in such an awful world today. And, you know, they might be right. I don't know. I'm not in their shoes. But the point of the story is that, you know, as I thought about this video, I thought like, oh my God, like, you know, how do people not get this? How do people not get the value of like, you don't, like, yes, Landmark is going to sell them. Yes, Landmark doesn't do advertising. Yes, like, there will be a pitching component of this. Yes, all of those things are true, but like, they're not like going to like put you in shackles and force you and shame you and like tar and feather anybody who doesn't want to do it. But if you don't show up, you have no idea what the hell Landmark even is. And I was so resistant. When the first people that invited me to Landmark, I was like, these guys are such dumb assholes. They don't know what transformation work is. They don't understand what love is. They're just like these corporate jerks who like this low-grade type of transformation work that's like watered down for the masses. Whereas me, I know what the truth is. I know what the good stuff is. And like Landmark is certainly none of that. And then, to make matters worse, I went to a graduation that my friend Sean was having with a woman named Kathy, an Australian woman named Kathy. And that even further solidified my opinion. I was like, now, not only do I have this like image of Landmark people who I don't respect, like in and of itself, but now like, okay, some of my friends have done it. Their lives are not transformed. They're not like these big, you know, like kind of intellectual, enlightened people. So, hey, that's another tick against Landmark. And then what's beyond that, they never tell me what they learned in Landmark. So like, you know, normally when I go experience something great, for example, if I read a great poem like, you know, William Butler Yeats' The Second Coming, and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer, things fall apart, the center cannot hold, mere anarchy is loosed upon the world, the blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned, the best lack all conviction, while the worst are filled with passionate intensity. I start sharing it. I want to share that line because it's meaningful to me. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are filled with passionate intensity. By the way, very much relevant to our whole conversation. I'll get to that in a second. I don't know how long this video is going to be. It could be pretty long because I'm just going to go. I'm dumping all of my shit right now. So I went to this thing and I absolutely hated it. It was like one of the most boring things I've ever experienced in my life. First of all, it was in a completely like corporate type, dry setting, a kind of place that like felt like vanilla. What was that movie where it's like, feels so good to be a gangsta, and like the guys are like beating up the fax machine? Office Space. Is that what it's called? Where like the guy, this like, you know, one guy's like, Red Stapler. And then he like burns down the office. Gosh, I wish I could remember that movie's title. I think it might be called Office Space. Let's just assume it's called Office Space. But it like kind of reminded me of that. You know, or like where Edward Norton worked in Fight Club, like the kind of place that like I as a millennial want to break free and like change completely. It's like the worst environment I could ever imagine, like a hellhole. So like that wasn't working for me. And then I go through this thing. It's so boring. And then they're trying to sell me on going to Landmark at the end, and I'm like, forget this stuff. I'm like, this is total bullshit. I'm like so not into it. It's like the stupidest thing I've ever experienced in my life. And I can't even believe that my friend had the audacity to invite me to something that bad, that stupid, that kind of out of integrity, whatever you want to call it. And then like fast forward maybe another year, and a friend of mine named John King, who was a leader, or he was very involved in the Mankind Project. It was an organization that I loved, and I was getting so much value out of it. It totally transformed my relationship with men. It sort of began my leadership path in the transformation arts and sciences. I loved Mankind Project. He started getting into Landmark, and you know, he started sharing Landmark with me, and I was like, all right, I'm into transformation work. Like, cool, why not? I'll find out more about this thing. Like, I'm into it. Cool. You know, I got an open mind, right? And, you know, so he starts sharing it with me, and I'm like, all right, cool, I'll do it. You know, like, I mean, it's just on my list. I'll get to it eventually. And then he starts fucking calling me 10 times a day. Literally, I had like 15 messages from him. And I started thinking to myself, you know what? Like, any organization that is that desperate to get me into their organization has got to be fucking bullshit. Has got to be like absolute, like there's got to be something wrong with this image if somebody is trying that hard to get me in. And I was like, I'm never doing, I'm like, now for sure I'm not doing it. I don't know whether or not I'm doing it to just spite you because I don't want to be hit up and bothered that much by anybody, or I'm doing it because like this is like the practice of the organization to bother people like this. There's something wrong with that. Totally not into it. I was completely out of it. And then, you know, basically what happened was I was building a transformation weekend, and you know, I was doing my research, and I was like, you know what, as a transformation leader, I want to do my research. I want to go through every single transformation program that I can, and I want to really find like what the best stuff is. And you know, I chose Landmark because I was like, this is like bullshit. I know it's bullshit. I already know it's bullshit. I haven't done it and I know it's bullshit because I've seen the people that go through it. I've seen their selling practices. I've been to their graduations. I've done all this stuff. I've seen their decor. Nothing with people like that, decor like that, sales practice like that, or whatever could ever have valuable content. I was totally convinced of this. But I said to myself, they're very successful. They seem to get a ton of people through. And what I've learned in my life is that anything that has some amount of success to it can't be 100% wrong. There's something that it's picking up on, and that's actually a quote from Ken Wilber. Ken Wilber's whole theory in AQUAL and spiral dynamics and what he wrote in Sex, Ecology, and Spirituality, if you've ever been through the 1,000-page tome, is all about how nobody can be 100% wrong. Nobody, not one tradition can be 100% wrong. That's like winning a game of hearts by collecting all the hearts and the Queen of Spades. In order to do that, you have to get something right to be 100% wrong. Even if you're just 99% wrong, you still got 1% right, which is a great, beautiful theory. And by the way, it's so part of this conversation. I'll get into that part later, and we'll talk about like hierarchical versus hierarchical values. I mean, this is like a very deep I'm going to get into spiral dynamics here. I'm going to get into AQUAL, lines of development. We're going to go all the way with this conversation. I'm taking it all the way. I don't know how long it's going to be. And I hope that this starts some like social media blaze with friends being like, no, this is bullshit, or people saying that's bullshit, because I think having a conversation about like something like this is way more important than talking about other things that might be happening in our world, because it's actually directly relevant. It's based on our minds and our education and our approach to life, and so much of who we are comes out, in my experience, about how we share transformation with each other, how we share things that we love with each other, etc. So, backing up a paragraph, where was I? Okay, so I'm totally and utterly convinced that this is the wrong thing, but I'm building a transformation weekend and I want to know what works. I'm going back through other different organizations and practices, and I'm thinking to myself, well, there must be a pattern to what works. There's always a pattern to what works. As Jim Rohn said, success leaves clues. If you want to be successful in any industry, you cannot reinvent the wheel. There is no reinventing the wheel. There is following patterns. Now, one of the fastest ways in order to become successful is you look at successful people and you model their behavior. And that was the formation of neurolinguistic programming by Grinder and Bandler, where they looked at Virginia Satir, they looked at Fritz Perls, they looked at who was it, Albert Ellis or Carl Rogers. They looked at the leading transformation leaders, and Milton Erickson, the hypnotherapist, the leading transformation leaders of their time, and they thought to themselves, how could we take these people, these individuals, these athletes who had ridiculous results, and basically convert their results into a systematic approach that we could teach every single growing therapist, so we could cut down the time that it would take for somebody to actually become a master facilitator. Really brilliant strategy. And it led to neurolinguistic programming. Now, some of you might be a fan of neurolinguistic programming. Others hear the word NLP and they're like, oh my God, this must be some culty weird stuff. And they're like, averse to it. I think that was probably me at first. I was like, anything that's called neurolinguistic programming must be wrong. Or you could call it what Tony Robbins renamed it, neuroassociative conditioning. It doesn't matter. They're essentially looking at how the brain uses language in order to represent the past and the present moment, and how you can use the submodalities of that to shift not only your thinking, but also how you experience world or how you learn new skills. So it's a very effective way of skill learning. So it's something that was adopted by the military, and it's a very effective practice. If you do not know NLP, you are missing a part of your mind. It's like not having an app on your phone, not having the clock app on your phone. You're missing a very important component to what makes your mind function in an effective way. Now, it's not necessary, you don't need it, but if you want to compete in the 21st century around other people who do have these types of models, whether explicitly or implicitly, then you're really at a handicap by not knowing it. Kind of like the Pitaha, if they want to compete in the 21st century, is at a handicap for not having numbers beyond 2. Now, they don't need to. In their culture, it's not very important. But if you're an American in our American culture and you want to be successful, you want to be happy, you want to have good relationships, you want to have all those things, you're competing at a much different level because I don't have my, oh, actually, I'm recording this on my phone. I was like, I don't have my phone here, but I'm recording it on my phone. But, you know, if you have a cell phone right now and you've got Facebook and you've got social media and your friends do and you live here in the world with us, then you're already operating at such a high level. You're operating at a level that was not designed for your brain. Your brain was developed 10,000 years ago. It stopped evolving at the Neolithic era. Now, our technology kept evolving. Our culture kept evolving. Our ethics kept evolving. So we've got so much technology in our brain. I mean, calculus, just in the English language itself as a technology, is absolutely remarkable. The words that we have to represent things, past, present, and future. I mean, that is a remarkable distinction and invention in the world. Not every culture throughout all time had a notion of past, present, and future. I mean, just imagine the number 0 wasn't invented until, like, you know, 1,000 or 2,000 years ago. That's absolutely remarkable. You know, it's like there was no concept of some of these things. Now, we take it all for granted today in the same way that we take civil rights for granted. And when I say civil rights, what I mean is that we take the idea that there aren't segregated water fountains for granted. I mean, there has never been one concept in my mind about like segregated buses or segregated water fountains. Because growing up, that was never a thing for me. I'm a Jewish man. There's never been a concept to me of anti-Semitism because growing up in LA, there was no anti-Semitism around me. Now, I have relatives who were murdered in the Holocaust, but I'm even removed from that. It's 2 generations away from me. And 2 generations is like, you know, like out of sight, out of mind. It's already gone. It's already like way in the past. So what I'm saying is that culture and mind and all of these things evolve in a very latent, soft fashion, meaning it's all happening, but we don't even know that it's necessarily happening around us. So let's go back to what I was saying. So I did Landmark because I was like, okay, I need to experience something that's working in culture, and I'll just experience it, and I went with my mom. Now, day 1, my mom was pissed. She was like, this is so dumb! I hate this! I don't get it! And I was sitting there going, oh my God, are they really doing what I think that they're doing? My mind was completely blown. They had 500 people in a room, and they were doing deep level transformation work. They were telling people, I don't know how much I'm allowed, I'll just tell you. They were telling people about their minds and what was meaningful and what was not meaningful, what was true and what was just like absolute nothing. And one of the things that one of my friends, John Moss, said to me before I even did it was he said, this is Zen for soccer moms. And I was like, no way, they can't be doing Zen. Haha, they're way too corporate and they're way too successful and big for that. Zen is something that's like magical and mystical that only works when you wear the Zen cloaks and you have Zen philosophy and you're working in a room that has incense lit in it. You can't be doing Zen for soccer moms, blah, 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 blah. And sure enough, I literally experienced Zen for soccer moms. And I was like, these guys are so brilliant. They've taken all of these esoteric ideas that nobody can understand, let alone a soccer mom, let alone somebody whose concern is like as far away from enlightenment and transcendence and getting beyond story and all types of things like that, would be into. And they actually put it in a little package that is so accessible. It's super accessible. Anyone can understand it. And it's like, just like this simple journey. And I was blown away. I was like, this is really cool, you know, and I saw the effectiveness of the transformation work, and I've done transformation work forever, and I get effectiveness practices, and, you know, there was this one girl behind me, and I'll never forget this in my forum, and she was a dark girl. I mean, I was like, oh my God, like out of like, you know, from a 0 to 10 scale, I've been suicidally depressed in my life, I know what it means to be dark. She was like definitely at a 10. I was like, I felt the heaviness of her vibe, and she was under a dark cloud. And I looked at her and I was like, and I like, you know, I kind of like go for people like that. When I'm in a transformational environment, I'm a participant. I'm not a leader in it. So I didn't like try to facilitate or process her, but I turned to her and I made a beeline. I was like, I was like, we talked, we shared, and I was like, you should really get up on the mic and you should share with the forum leader. Knowing that, like, any sort of capable transformation leader is going to see that. And sure enough, like, I kept encouraging her, and finally she got up, she shared at the mic, and the forum leader did his thing on her, and I was like, damn, he's good. I was like, woo! I was like, oh my god, that is elite facilitation. It's just like crisp and clear, like a, Beverly Hills cosmetic surgeon, perfect. He can make, an ugly person look beautiful, kind of thing. And literally, like, time went on, and when I saw her again at the graduation on Tuesday, it was like, this was a completely different person. She went from like a 10 on the scale of depression to like a 0. She was bright. I mean, she looked beautiful. She was shining. She was smiling. It was like her whole life had been completely transformed. And I mean, I've seen transformation work before. I've seen tons of transformation work before. So that's not miraculous. You can get that in a million different organizations. You can get that from life coaching. You get that from a billion different people. There's nothing unique about transformation work. But what made Landmark unique to me is that it was a package. It was like, most transformation organizations, they're based on the personality of the person leading them. Now, there are a few that aren't, but so many, like life coaches, you take Tony Robbins, it's based on personality. If you take out the personality of the facilitator, the whole system falls apart. But that wasn't the case with this. This was like a package. It was like, boom. It was like a factory. As Ken Wilber would say, he wanted to create a conveyor belt from stages of consciousness. So like a conveyor belt, from, red, or let's just say purple, like tribalism, all the way through to, green level consciousness, to integral level consciousness, to turquoise, spirit level consciousness. And like, I was like, I'm witnessing a conveyor belt of consciousness right now. You just like put people in that system, and boom, they just keep going, and they're all the way at the top. Now, what also made it different to me is that people could be in forever. Now, people could be in literally their entire lives. And there are other systems where it's like, people can go in and, they get a big transformation, and then boom, they come back, they're dropped off at the corner of their life, and they don't really, there's nothing that they can do to sustain it. And this whole conversation is going to sound like I'm selling Landmark. And by the way, I totally recognize that, and I am selling Landmark because I believe in it. I think it's amazing. But what I'm really talking about are stages of consciousness, and I'm going to get there. But it's all very relevant in the package of this, because this is sort of where I'm at right now. Now, with that in mind, so I saw all of this and I was like, oh my God, this is such a brilliant system. It just works. It's like necessary education. It's all of that. Now, one of the things that, as I shared this, as I was sharing my experience of inviting people, inviting people to tonight, to experience this Landmark Forum Leader, it was like the range of responses were so great. Some people were like, okay, I'm just in, period. Other people were like, don't ever talk to me about Landmark. Don't ever talk to me about this culty, weird, bullshit thing. They were exactly like me, 2 years ago. They were like, don't waste my time with this, you asshole jerk. I'm offended that you'd even think that I would stoop to such low level. And then there were all of these responses in between about people who were like, nah, I got other things I want to do. I want to like brush my cat's teeth tonight. To like, I'm really interested, but I'm on the fence because I've heard this stuff over there about how awful it is, and I've heard this stuff over there about how good it is, and I'm confused because I don't really know what the deal is. And the truth is that like normally in my life, and I brought up this Mother Teresa quote for exactly this reason. I would be angry. I'd be like, why aren't people wanting to do what I say they want to do? And why aren't they believing me? Why don't they trust my opinion here? And, I would have been upset, and I would have been like, everyone is saying no. What does that mean about me? This is so awful. And, am I defective? Like, if so many people are not into this, does that mean that I'm into something bad? Like, what am I, like, there must be something wrong with it. And, what I've learned, and this is actually a Landmark distinction, is, that's what I'm saying, like literally Landmark, by the way, if you want to know how Landmark was created, And, land Martians out there, you can correct me, but this is my understanding, is Werner Erhard basically did kind of what Bandler and Grinder did. He went out to all the leading theorists, spiritualities, psychiatrists, transformation movements, and counter movements of his time, and he collected the best distinctions. He just collected all the best stuff in a similar way as Tony Robbins does, and he codified it into a single system. And, I've heard that's why he also didn't write any books, because it was all copywritten material. I wouldn't be surprised. He just took everybody, the best of the information of his time, and he put it into a little easy-to-follow system. Now, that's why, literally, when I experience Landmark, I'm like, it's so brilliant. It's like I'm reading Gödel Escher Bach right now by Douglas Hofstadter, and I'm thinking to myself, this is so brilliant. It is masterfully brilliant. And, some systems are like that, others aren't. And anyway, so it's all of this juicy philosophy. So one of them is don't make people wrong. It's like, if I'm in a communication with somebody, and NLP put it like this, the meaning of your communication is the response you get. And so if I'm in a communication with somebody and they're not getting me, and they're not understanding it, and I'm making them wrong for not understanding it, then I've totally missed the whole point, where it's not their job to understand, but it's my job to communicate. And if some part of my communication is not landing, I can do what everybody does, which is like, blah, 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 or I can recognize that there's value that's just not being communicated, which is really the truth. That, for the people that I shared tonight with, who were not interested in coming, I did not communicate value to them. All they heard was, not my type, not my cup of tea. Whereas, in my mind, I was like, here's the value that I see, here's what I understand. And this was exactly my experience with being invited to Landmark, where nobody could communicate the value to me. People were like, oh, it's really good. And I was like, okay, well, I'm doing things that are better than that, so fuck you. I'm going to move on, I'm going to keep doing my things. And after I did it, I was like, guys, friends, if you had communicated the value to me, then I would have went in a heartbeat. You just didn't communicate it to me in a way that I understood it. Now, ultimately, there's that intractable gap between things. So, for example, in between stars, what distance is, yet how much vaster the distance between you and I, right here. Crossing that divide is really, really hard. It's really impossible. And when I say impossible, what I mean is like Stanley Cavett wrote this article, I forgot when, called Must We Say What We Mean? And in it, he's really examining that idea about the idiosyncrasies of language. And the problem is that when I say green, you're not hearing green. What is green? If I say blue, is blue, the color of this black background, or the color of this corner, dark blue, or the color of it where it kind of lights up? Or is it the color of, the clear blue LA sky when it's sunny? I mean, what is blue? When I use the word blue, you have this large range. Now, if you're in a different culture that has different divisions between colors, oh, interesting. Facebook said, keep going. We're telling your friends to join your video. Yeah, everybody is logged off this video. People are like, oh, I don't want to hear any more about this bullshit. Whatever, I'm still going to keep going. So, if you live in a culture that has divisions between between colors, then different divisions, and I think that they're, gosh, I'm forgetting cultures, but there's like, for example, in Russian, You've got blue, green, and then there's a color between blue, green. And then in another language, I'm forgetting what the language is. I want to say Kalahari, but I don't think that's a language. I forgot what it was. Anyways, there is no blue-green distinction. It's all the same color. So distinction creates something in the world. It really does create something. So this idea of not making people wrong is a really important one, because nobody's wrong. Like, for example, nobody has to, learn Spanish, and nobody has to learn French, and nobody has to learn calculus, and nobody has to enjoy classical music, and nobody has to study philosophy, and nobody has to study Heidegger and Hegel, and nobody has to study existential philosophy or humanistic philosophy. But it just depends on what value people are getting from it, what the ultimate value is. So to really, kind of continue the phrase, the problem for me is that when I first approached landmark. And landmark is a metaphor to me. I want you guys to know that. I don't really care if anybody does landmark. The only reason why I care that people showed up to my house tonight is because I actually have a forum leader where there are only 30 of them in the world teaching, which is a really unique opportunity. And it's sort of like, if somebody invited me to the Pope at their house, I would go. Not because I'm into Christianity, but because I'd be curious what the person has to share or offer in an intimate setting. I mean, I'm a curious person like that. And so ultimately, like, doing landmark is not the point of this. Like, go do MITT, go do the Mankind Project, go take my Star Lab. It's all valuable. I mean, but to go back to the metaphor, in terms of like Wilbur's stages of consciousness, and nobody's probably going to listen this far into the video. If someone does, definitely write something Red Lobster on the comments, because I highly doubt anyone's going to listen this long. And if they do, I'm sincerely impressed. This is probably the longest video that I've made, and it's a total rant. But anyways, if you did listen this far, you're going to get a lesson in spiral dynamics in the Graves model. So essentially, in the Graves model of spiral dynamics, you have different stages of consciousness. And the way that Tony Robbins teaches this is wonderful. He talks about it in terms of Nelson Mandela. When Nelson Mandela was leading his revolution in, South Africa, he needed a way to distinguish types of people, not just black and white, because you could have a white person who was part of the movement, and you could have a white person who wanted to kill you. So you couldn't just say white people are bad, black people are good. That's too simplistic of a distinction. But he said that he could adopt the Graves model about people's level of consciousness. So there's beige level of consciousness, which is like animal instinct. I don't even know what that looks like really in humanity. You can imagine like an early hominid, or you can imagine, like a human being who grows up without being raised in a culture. That's like a beige level of consciousness. And then you've got tribal level of consciousness, a purple level of consciousness, which is all about deferring to rules. So in cultures, this looks like animism. This looks like, the witch doctor kind of rules the roost, and everybody is afraid of, the gods, and, they do all these superstitious acts, and everything they do is to appease, a god in their life. It's all about rule following and, making sure you don't break the rules. And it's purple level tribalistic consciousness. The consciousness above that is red, because what happens is, a mean red person breaks free of this tribal level thinking of like right, wrong, all of these things, and they develop their own autonomy, and it's all about egocentrism. And then the next level is blue, which is like about absolutism. So you can imagine this as like the tribal leader is broken free and he's conquered all the lands, but now he's nearing death. And he's like, well, what do I do now? And he needs to defer to some absolute principles. So this is, kind of the level of religious fundamentalism. It's the level of, like real right and wrong from a mystical sense. Sorry, not mystical. I think Wilbur might call it, someone can correct me on this. It's not, it's magical. So it's not mythical anymore, but it's magical. No, sorry. I got that totally confused. Anyways, I didn't freshen up on this before I started this rant. So somebody who's listening to this might correct me. But anyways, it's blue level consciousness around, fundamentalism, around rules, around, here it is. So like a police officer, very fundamentalist, or a religious Christian, whatever. Then the level above that is orange level consciousness. This is the consciousness of scientific materialism. It's the consciousness of like, oh, now we've gotten past this ideology of the church, which is based in dogma, and we can actually examine the world in this scientific, rational way. And we can look at things as they are and go for effectiveness, go for what actually achieves a great result. So we're going for a goal. So this is also the level of entrepreneurship. It's a very orange level idea where it's like, we've got a mission, we're moving this vehicle towards achieving a common end. Then above that, there's green level consciousness. And green level consciousness is around pluralism of values, it's around hierarchy, it's around egalitarianism. There's also all the implications of like protecting the environment, protecting all the animals, protecting human rights and multiple rights, etc. And then there's a level above, and this is where Ken Wilber's work really comes into play. And then there's a level above green level consciousness, which is integral level consciousness. And integral level consciousness is represented by So if the green level was represented kind of by like 60s counterculture revolution and postmodernism and stuff like that, then integral level consciousness is represented by the internet. It's represented by Wikipedia. It's represented by this like merging of all of these different ideas together. Not so much in a melting pot, but in a, what do you call it, like a fruit salad or something like that. And then above integral level consciousness is turquoise level consciousness. I forgot what they call this. It's like, they call it like level of mysticism or spirit, where it's like very high level, like you're in now communion with all of nature and plants. It's not like green level consciousness where it's like, yeah, trees are cool, but it's like you like go, ah, and all of a sudden birds like fly on your shoulder. And, as Patanjali said, that, when one has become fully self-realized, all creatures will cease to feel enmity in one's presence. And enmity is like, fear or hatred. So, from the crocodiles to the birds, you kind of unite things. I don't really know what turquoise level looks like, because there are different lines of development. Man, I'm not going to go too deeply into this, but there's a cognitive line of development, meaning like you could be cognitively turquoise or integral, but in terms of how you think, in terms of how you use like language, how you represent ideas to yourself. But then practically speaking, you could be, totally blue in how you practice and how you live your life. So, there are lots of levels of complexity. But here's sort of what I found. Here's what I found. And this is very relevant to Landmark. So Landmark, I believe, is a turquoise level organization. It is very high level Zen Buddhism. It's very high level spirit. And it's all about really love at a very deep level. It's about experiencing love. Now, see, most people don't see that because it shows up as an orange level organization. And it shows up orange because there's a lot about enrollment. They do a bunch of sales pitches. They're constantly sharing Landmark. And, and it's got this like corporate type decor. And the people that are involved in it are usually, in my experience, like orange level people. Like that's what they look like. And that's what Landmark caters to. Now, one of the very interesting things about what I said earlier about the meaning of your communication is the response you get is, well, what audience are you catering to? So, for example, like the generation before my generation, what do you call them? Baby boomers. They're very orange consciousness people in a lot of ways. Like that sort of like was the beginning of green consciousness, but predominantly orange consciousness. Now, my generation, millennials, were very much orange consciousness. That's sort of like how we were born into the world, about like civil rights, plurality, postmodernism, all of those things. So Landmark is turquoise knowledge and information. Werner Erhard went around and gathered all of this like enlightenment technology, spiritual technology, and he packaged it in an orange way. Now, and that's how the organization shows up. So when you put a green level consciousness person in Landmark, they freak out. They literally have, it's like one of the worst experiences of their life. They're like, these people are pressuring me. They're doing this. They're telling me to sell Landmark. They're telling me to blah, 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 all this stuff. And the irony of it, and I was having a long conversation with my friend John Ma last night, is that ultimately I said that Yeats has this great line in his poem, that the best lack all conviction, while the worst are filled with passionate intensity. And the truth is that so many of the problems that I experience in the world today are caused by people not sharing. People not sharing their deepest, darkest secrets, their deepest truths, what's really going on with them, and they put on these veneers, and they post shit on Facebook that's like, oh, I'm doing really great, and life is amazing. And it's not real. It's not really sharing what's truly going on in their heart. And there are different levels to this, because some people, I'm sure, are being authentic. I posted something else, I posted something the other day saying, like, I feel so happy, like I'm on 10 shots of espresso, and I meant it. But I've done work. That's like an athlete in the gym saying, like, I feel the pump in my arms today. And you can see their arms, and they're pumped up because they work at it, and they actually have a practice that leads to that type of behavior, as opposed to like, yeah, everything's great, here are photos of how beautiful I am, and meanwhile every night they're crying and they're weeping and they're like, I feel so lonely, I don't have a life, what's wrong with me, whatever goes on. And there are lots of people with green level consciousness who want to end racism in the world. They want to end world hunger. They want world peace. They want all of these beautiful things. And yet they have zero effectiveness. And what I mean by that is they have zero orange level consciousness that's in the mix there. Now, what John would say is that you can't skip a stage. So John would say you can't be a green level consciousness person without having passed through orange. I actually personally disagree with that. I actually think that you can be cognitively orange because it's your ideology. It's sort of how you thought, how you were raised. It's your belief system. It's your whatever. But still not be orange in your effectiveness practices and how you achieve and how you approach leadership, for example, in your communication. Now, that's one of the things that I feel turns off almost all green people. So many people that I've shared Landmark with who are green, like they just, they cringe at it because Landmark shares itself. It is like very aggressive about how it presents transformation to the world. But here's the big question. How do you sell transformation? How do you sell it? I mean, I'm literally inviting one of the most elite transformation leaders in the entire world. I mean, like, there are maybe 40, 50 people who are at this level of expertise and knowledge in the entire world. And their names include people like Byron Katie and Tony Robbins. So there aren't very many people at this level of transformation skill. And I still am having trouble inviting people over to go experience this. Why? Because people don't see the value of transformation. They don't get it. They don't fully understand it. And we all want to drink our own Kool-Aid. You know, like we all want like our thing and to promote our message and to promote our view. You know, I was talking to this reporter the other day, and we were talking about how silly it is that there are charities in this world that do the same thing but compete with each other. How does that make any sense at all? That there are people in this world who want to help homeless people, and yet they don't collaborate. How does that help us as a world? Like, I don't get it. Man, I don't know even where I'm going with that. But anyways, the point is that as a turquoise organization presenting material in an orange fashion, they necessarily alienate green level consciousness people. If you're not an integral level consciousness, or you're not green moving into integral, or you're not orange level consciousness, Landmark is like totally not for you. It will help you become an integral thinker, but it's totally not for you. You'll be like, this is the worst thing I've ever experienced in my life. You're like, oh, I hate all this pressure or whatever. But the irony is that the only way to raise a different level of consciousness is you must fully embrace the level that you're at and the level before the level that you're at. This is Wilbur 101. So each level transcends and includes the other level. So if you're green and you want to be integral, the only way to do that is you must fully embrace green and you must embrace orange. So in terms of organizational levels, and I remember I talked to John King all the time about this before I'd done Landmark, and I was just an idiot talking about something I'd never experienced before, and I didn't fully understand. You know, John would say like, oh, no, Landmark is an orange level organization. MKP is a green level organization. That's totally true. MKP is totally green. And, you know, there is no integral level organization. There is no integral level transformation organization. And I was like, no, Tony Robbins is integral level. He totally brings people up a conveyor belt. Until I actually did Landmark, and I was like, no, Landmark is a totally integral level organization. If you understand what the heck Landmark is telling you, you will raise your level of consciousness. It's a conveyor belt. Like, you will go from green to integral if you embrace the orange element. That it's not like about Landmark, but in the world. Landmark just represents it. So there are people who believe in wonderful things. There are people who have wonderful missions, who want to help the world, who want to transform the world. But that is not possible without sharing. Now, some people are very uncomfortable when it comes to this. Some people think to themselves, like, you know, if I share myself, then people will judge me, they won't like me, they'll reject me, all of that. And it's so true. That is the risk that you take with sharing. So for example, I've spent this whole video, I don't know how long it is, it's probably like 40 minutes, sharing about Landmark, something that in the listening of our culture is like totally uncool. Like I might as well be sharing about Scientology or something like that, you know, and like people might be commenting or thinking and judging the heck out of me. And they probably even clicked off this video. They probably didn't even listen this far, but they're judging the heck out of me. They're like, you know what? I don't really trust so much about what Ben has to say anymore. You know, anyone who's into that is obviously not very intelligent. Anyone who's into that is obviously like a lower level of consciousness or whatever. And, you know, just in the same way as, you know, I would judge someone who was religiously fundamentalist, or I would judge somebody who was a Scientologist, or I'd judge somebody who, you know, was in a cult or whatever. And, you know, I just think that it's the 21st century. You know, it's like, let's get over all of this stuff. Let's appreciate knowledge for knowledge's sake. Now, as an organization, I believe Landmark will be significantly disrupted. I mean, how many more years can it last in the 21st century with the type of technology that we have? I don't think very long. You know, I think that it will be radically disrupted. I don't think it will be able to survive. I see other organizations not being able to survive, and they're very beautiful organizations. They have awesome stuff to share. Maybe it'll last forever, who knows? I personally think it'll be disrupted. But I also think that, you know, it's contributed so much to the world. I mean, Werner Erhard introduced terms like, thank you for sharing. He reintroduced integrity back to the world. And there's like, I don't know, there's like this transformation nerd in me that really appreciates it. And I think that, like, if I were to tie up this whole rant today, what I would say is that whatever it is that you're sharing, doesn't matter what it is. Whether or not you're sharing about, you know, your love for Hillary Clinton and how you must impeach Donald Trump, or whether or not you're sharing about women's rights, or whether or not you're sharing about anti-bullying campaigns, or wanting to feed more homeless people, or, you know, wanting people to wake up in their life and to love themselves or to love each other, you're gonna get kicked in the face. Like you're gonna get all types of negative reactants. You're going to get all types of feedback. You're going to get all types of people that absolutely hate you for what you're doing. If you want to help people, you're going to get all types of reactants and resistance. They're going to hate you for helping them. And you have a choice in those matters. And your choice is either you do it anyways, or you give in to the inertia of society. You just follow the flock. You say, okay, you know what, this is hard, and you completely give up. And what I'm saying is that it doesn't matter what it is that you really believe in. Now, some people, especially green level consciousness, who believe in heterarchy and use their heterarchy value as a hierarchy and pretend that it's not, would say that, you know, like, oh, no, it does matter. Like, no, you can't be for Donald Trump. That is so wrong. You must be anti-Donald Trump, just like us, but accept all values, you know, which is like the great irony that Ken Wilber talks about in Mean Green. It's green posing, actually, it's red actually posing as green. You know, it's like whatever you believe in, go for it, 150%. Like, just go for it, you know, it doesn't matter. Like, if you're a racist white supremacist and that's what you believe in, go for it. And the reason why I say that is because more often than not, the racist white supremacists are part of that group of the, you know, while the worst are filled with passionate intensity. They're already going for it 100%. Whereas you, who is filled with love, who's filled with something to really contribute to society, to really help people, is unwilling to share what you have to share. You're unwilling to share your story. You're unwilling to share your truth because you're afraid of being lumped in the same category of all those people who you think are filled with passion and intensity and adding more chaos to the mix. You're afraid of being judged. You're afraid of not looking good. You're afraid of your friends leaving you. You know, I've lost so many friends by sharing things in my life. My whole fucking life. You know, in high school, I would share free food, I shared love, I shared, let's all come together and unite, and people fucking threw things at me, people hated me, people wanted to murder me, people were so angry that I was standing for love and peace, and for people across different classes, or different, you know, generations, what do you call those? Grades, coming together and uniting and loving each other and supporting each other. People hated me for that. They hated me. And you know what? I would never take that back. You know, I would never take that back, because the truth is that if I inspired one person to go for their mission, to go for their goal in life, and not to hold it back, not to be afraid, then it was all worth it. It It was completely worth it because it doesn't take too many good people in the world to transform the world. You know, it's like the problem of evil is not that there were evil people in the world, and there are all types of theodicies created to try to deal with this problem of evil in the world. The real problem of evil is that there are good people who stand around and do absolutely nothing. And the problem with that is that we weren't raised in our culture to know what to do. Yes, there are, radical polemics by people like Malcolm X, about like the ballot or the bullet, like we must step up, we must do things in life. But we don't really address the how-to. We don't really address the what gets in the way. Most of our brains are not programmed in order to compete against a society whose inertia and center of gravity is moving away from where we are. If the center of gravity of culture right now is orange, it's hard to be green. I mean, just think about you green people who stand for environmentalism, who stand for egalitarianism, who stand for equality of values, and what you have to put up with orange people who don't understand you. Orange people who don't give a shit about equality, they don't give a shit about liberalism, they just want to go towards effectiveness, and they want to do things that violate basic principles of human nature, and they want to take away freedom of choice, and they want to take away all of these things. It's like, how much does that bother you? How much does that piss you off? How much does that hurt you? Wow, I totally lost my train of thought. Shit, that's the problem with going with just a rant. Oh man, I was about to make a good point. And it hurts. It really, like all of these things, they hurt. And the problem is that we're not really having conversations with each other. The problem is that we're talking over each other and we're making each other wrong. And, the truth is that it takes sharing. That's what changes the world. It's like Walt Disney shared his dream and now we have, the Walt Disney Corporation. Martin Luther King shared his dream and now we have civil rights. Oh, I know where I was going. The problem is that I think a lot boils down in my mind to education. And it's really that simple. If somebody doesn't have the technology in their mind to memorize things, then good luck having them compete toe-to-toe with me for memorizing a poem. I can memorize this poem like, bright star, would I were as steadfast as thou art, not in lone splendor, hung aloft the night, or watching with eternal lids apart, like nature's patient, sleepless eremite, the moving waters at their priest-like task of pure ablution round earth's human cores, or gazing on the new soft-fallen mask of snow upon the mountains and the moors. No, still steadfast, still unchangeable, pillowed in my fair love's ripening breast, to feel forever its soft fall and swell, awake forever in fair unrest, still to hear each tender taken breath, and so live ever, or else swoon to death. I can memorize a poem like that in like 5 to 7 minutes. Now, good luck trying to memorize that poem if you don't have the same technology in your brain. And I'm not talking about like prayer or superstition. I mean, I have technology in my brain. I've got an entire system that it's taken me over 10 years to build that is a scaffolding in my brain. My brain does not take in information like most people's. You probably hear things and you're lucky if you remember them because you do it through rehearsal and through repetition. So your brain is like a big warehouse where you just sort of like shovel in information through the front door, and it sometimes goes places, sometimes you find it, sometimes you don't. For episodic memories, you probably have a bit more of a memory because you can attach a location to it organically. My brain doesn't work like that. My brain works like an encyclopedia. It works like a library. It works like a city. There's a plan to it. I know where things are. I know how to retrieve information, which is why I could come up with a poem like that, which is why I could come up with all hundreds of the poems that I know in my mind, and I could recall them like that. I don't need to search. I don't need to guess. I don't need to reach. It's there. It's immediate. And had I refreshed on spiral dynamics stuff, I would have been about all the points because it's kept in a very linear fashion in my mind. Now that is not natural. That is very far from natural. If it's not even natural to have numbers beyond 3, if numbers are not even an innate quality of the human mind, meaning people are not born able to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things. I'm holding 3 things right now. People do not come born into the world knowing how to represent 3 things, or even knowing how to represent color, knowing how to represent blue from red. Now, you'd think that it's completely arbitrary. You'd think that this is completely innate because you take it for granted. But I'm telling you, this is what I study. I study technology. I study spiritual technology, which is really just another way of saying software for your mind. ideas, things that go in your mind and they latch on. Now, there are ideas like racism, which is old technology, and there are ideas like egalitarianism, which is new technology. But the point is that it is technology. It is learned. It is definitely not innate. And the problem with our society is we do not have methods of instructing people on the matters that matter most. Yes, we instruct people on a mechanized industrial system for tests that were created hundreds of years ago, like the SATs, in order to actually learn how to reproduce information in a systematic, mechanical fashion. Not how to think creatively, not how to even remember, not how to learn, not how to relate to other human beings. You know, and there's a value to learning history. There's a value to learning mathematics, the way that we teach it in schools. But the problem is that it's, again, 20th, 19th, 18th century type thinking. And we've moved into the 21st century. I mean, our whole, methods of production and our ideologies have not moved into the 21st century, but our bodies are. Now, here's what I fully believe. What I fully believe is that living in the 21st century is not arbitrary. It's not easy. And most people suffer tremendously because they do not know how to reconcile their ancient brain with the speed of society today. Now, there are certain practices which I think are really effective for this. I think Tony Robbins has some great stuff. I think Byron Katie has some great stuff. I think Landmark has some great stuff. I think Zen has some great stuff. I think even Transcendental Meditation has some great stuff. I think Brene Brown has some great stuff. I think that there are tons of different organizations that have amazing, valuable things to offer, which are non-arbitrary. And I wish it was as simple as just like, you get the idea. I wish it was that simple. Just like I wish it was as simple, I wish peace was as simple as just like saying I'm sorry. But like think about somebody who you have an issue with. If you went to them and you made peace with them and you just said, hey, I'm so sorry for all the things that I did, what would happen? Nothing. There would be no peace. There might be this like big conciliance that happens over 2 minutes, but the problem is just like a piano, if you tune it once and you start playing it, what happens? It goes out of tune. It's like guitar is an easier example. You tune your guitar, you start playing it, and over time, it goes out of tune. You have to keep consistently retuning it. Wow. All right, I'm on a rant. I think I went for a whole hour. Oh my God. I could go on for like 5 hours, but now it's just boring. So I doubt anyone listened to the very end of this. If you did, we got a new phrase. So not red lobster. Let's do turquoise lobster. Yeah, there it is. We'll do some turquoise lobster. So if you listen this far, what I'd love to communicate to you is share whatever's going on with you. Like share your breakthroughs with somebody. Share what you've learned with somebody. Share something important with somebody. Share what you're into. Share it with me. I might not be into it. I might hate it. I might judge you for it. I might think that you're a complete, utter idiot for even thinking to invite or include me in something so banal. But share it anyways. Share it anyways because that is what creates movement in culture. That's what creates breakthroughs. That's what creates something new. And it's by withholding our knowledge. It's by withholding really beautiful things that culture stagnates and people don't learn and people don't grow. So that's just a really long way of saying don't make people wrong. and a little lesson of spiral dynamics. So much love, many blessings. And think of somebody in your life who you're making wrong for something, especially because they're not understanding you, because they're not appreciating you, because they're not where you're at. And think to yourself, how can you appreciate them exactly where they're at? How can you love them exactly where they're at and not make it personal and actually have compassion and give them love? And see what happens from that perspective. Much love, many blessings, have a beautiful day, and I love you.